Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for your time this morning. We are going to go ahead and get started. And hopefully if anybody comes in, I won't miss their request to come in. So we're going to jump into session 2, which is really going to be geared toward the budgeting part of that CSP grant application. So let's get started. Our objectives today provide CSP subgrant applicants with a clear understanding of the budgetary aspects of the CSP subgrant RFA. We'll have some introduction real quickly. Of course, you already know me if you've already been, if this is really session 2 for you. Tammy Morgan, charter school program grant funding periods. We'll look at the budget form, some other resources. We'll talk about office hour availability, and then obviously at any point along the way, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate. Either unmute or jump in the chat and we will get started. I'm Tammy Morgan, our program director, Jermaine Gilson. She's the assistant superintendent at the Office of School Choice. And she will maybe possibly be joining us today, maybe not. It's really one of those maybe so. Okay, so the CSP budgeting is going to have funding periods. What's important to remember is all the entire grant application first depends on you have been authorized. Okay, so if you are opening a new school or replicating and opening a new school, what you'll do is you'll be eligible for planning funding from the time you are authorized until the time that you actually open the school. Implementation funding begins on day 1 of school opening. And so you can kind of see that it really would depend on when you were authorized and when you plan to open. For those schools that are expanding, it is planning funding only, and it's going to be based on when are you authorized to expand, and when do you, when that expansion actually begins, that's when you can begin using planning funding. Okay, so let's say, for example, a school is Bessie authorized. We have schools coming up in our October Bessie. So let's say they're authorized in October 2024 with a plan to open July, August 2025. That means from October 2024 to July 2025, or August 2025, whatever their first day of school is, all of what is allowable expenditures for planning will be used, and then implementation funding can be used for the first 2 years the school is in operation. Okay, if they decide that they don't really want to open until the following August or July, then that would just extend out the planning period time for them. However, it would not shorten up the implementation period time. Okay, does that kind of help clear that up a little bit? I know that is one of the somewhat confusing parts. Does anybody have any questions about that? All right, great. I don't see any, but I'll keep an eye. So for expansion, obviously, and again, I already said this, the implementation period that will last for up to 24 months. Okay. So what I really want to do today is take a look at that budget form that you're going to find at the LDOE website. So I'll show you where that can be located. Let me share a different screen. Let me see if I can just drag this one up. Will it do that? Nope. Okay. Stop sharing there. Start sharing there. Okay, so here is, oh, went to the wrong one. Here we go. I'm going to drop this in the chat. This is the CSP webpage that's currently on LDOE, Louisiana Believes website. And you'll see that we have a CSP planning and implementation grant budget form. Okay, so when you click on this form, up, and it is an Excel document. However, don't even bother to do it. As soon as you try to do anything at this point, it's going to pop up and tell you that saves can't happen. Okay, and it will not be automatically saved. I'm going to undo that. So just click on File, and you can either save as a Google Sheet. Well, that's really your only option at first. And then once it opens up as a Google Sheet, you'll have the option to save it as an Excel document, whichever you're good with working in. You will be submitting it with your CSP application as an Excel document. But you can work it up in Google Sheets if this is something that you want to keep live so that you can share among several team members. Obviously, Google Sheets is a good way to do that. All of the formulas and everything that are already built in will continue to work in either format, either in Google Sheets or in Excel. So one of the things that I want to point out is you will only enter budget on, I'm going to highlight this little spot right here. You will only enter budget data on the budget detail worksheets, and all of the summary pages will automatically be updated. So when we add items to detail year 1, detail year 2, or detail year 3, we will see updates in summary year 1, summary year 2, summary year 3, and then finally a whole 3-year summary. And also whatever information we enter here for the name of the eligible recipient, we're going to call this best school ever. And give it a street address on Wow Street. In amazing Louisiana. Okay. When I put this in, when we go to our detail pages, we will see all of this information is on the detail pages where we need it to be. So once you fill it in on the info page, it automatically carries it into the other pages right where we want it to be. Okay. All the way over to the 3-year summary. So start with completing the information on the info page. If you have a program coordinator, it's just this first section that will populate to the other tabs. But if you have other people that you want to be listed as contact for this grant, please list them there on the info page as well. Okay. CSP funding rules. This is where we're going to spend a little bit of time kind of explaining what we mean by year 1, year 2, year 3. Okay. And like I just said, year 1 is that planning period, and it really might be less than a year or more than a year. Okay. So, excuse me. So if you're using planning and implementation funding, this year 1 is going to be from the time you are authorized all the way to the start of school. Funding during that period can be used to refine the desired educational result and can be used for professional development. Also, too, there is one other thing, and I'm not sure why it's not listed here, but let me pull that up real quick. And I will get this corrected. Our website updates are not, we're still transitioning to a new website at LDOE, so it's taking some time. So I believe I submitted a correction for this, but it's definitely not there yet. Okay. 1 second. Okay. What is missing from this right here, which should be on line 15, 16, or 17, is pre-opening salaries for essential staff. So that is all that can be used during the planning period. And again, that could be less than a year, more than a year. It is going to be from the time you are authorized, be it to expand or open a new charter, from the time you are authorized to the time the school opens. Okay. If you are, and then year one is the first year the school is operating, year two is the second year the school is operating. Question about, like, for example, let's say you've got it all together, you have your planning funding laid out and your implementation funding, you really don't think you'll need it for 2 years. You think you'll have everything squared away and taken care of in year one, that's absolutely fine. You're still going to use this top line if you are new or replicating to put in for planning or implementation or planning and implementation funding. If you don't need year three, that's fine. That's actually great, but it is one of the options there for you. If you are an expanding school, you're only going to apply for implementation funding, and that is going to be for year one and year two. Now, the expansion funding is going to, year one is not necessarily your first day of school in that first year after you begin your expansion, okay? It is where you start spending dollars in that expansion effort for a 12-month period. So let's say, for example, you're authorized to expand. Let's say you're right now, you're a 9-12 school, and you're authorized to expand and pick up 8th grade, 7th grade, and 6th grade. Or you're going to expand and start at 6th grade and grow 6th, 7th, and 8th grade out. Wherever you start spending dollars on creating that expansion, that is where your year one begins. And for the next 12 months, that is what your year one will be. Your year two will obviously start the day after your year one ends and become your year two, as long as it's just a 12-month period. Okay. Does that make sense to everyone? Because I know it can be a little bit confusing that in model one, what we're seeing here, year one could be less than a year or more than a year. But in model two, year one is only a 12-month period. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. When we're talking about implementation funding, that's when it opens up a lot more to what is an allowable expenditure. We can inform the community about the school, acquire necessary equipment, acquire or develop curriculum materials, and other initial operational costs. We don't have those listed out here on the budget form, but they are listed out in the RFA. So some examples include support costs associated with wireless infrastructure, which is costlier in less densely populated areas, one-to-one student and staff technology, student and staff recruitment, classroom supplies and materials, or one-time investments in transportation. So for example, the purchase of buses. What I can tell you it doesn't cover is building, okay? By the way, LDOE has applied for, and we are hoping, we did apply for the CSP facilities grant. So obviously we're hoping to be able to help with facilities at some point, but right now we're still in a holding pattern waiting on hearing back from USDOE on that. What's important to remember is these have to be one-time costs. You cannot have anything that's reoccurring or that has to be sustained beyond the life of the grant. So if you're expanding and you have budget for year one and year two, don't include anything that would be necessary expenditure in year three, in year four, in year five, okay? Because the CSP grant is designed to help with those activities, but not to sustain them, okay? So it's really important to remember these have to be one-time needs. And then remember, it is a supplement and not a supplant, according to federal rules. Everybody's with me so far? Good.
Yes.
Good. All right. Object codes, you're used to seeing these. And how these are set out is exactly what you're used to seeing in EGMS. I am going to drop a document in the chat. I think it will let me drop a document in the chat. Let's see. That is fiscal review guidance. This was, oh, good, it does. And I'll open that up real quick and share that. This is provided by USDOE's finance office, and it kind of gives you some really good ways to make sure that you're actually describing what needs to be in those lines for each object code. So for example, if you're going to say pre-opening staff, describe those salaries, 2 full-time paraprofessionals 100% dedicated to supporting students. So for example, for CSP grant, you could say receptionist, full-time receptionist at the school site in support of fundraising activities. Okay. And so this kind of gives you some really good examples of how to make sure that you're clearly setting out what you want as part of each of these object codes, okay? So this is kind of just a supplemental document that you can use along the way. Again, I'll remind you that, let me go back to sharing that. There we go. Okay, and as you begin to fill in your budget form, remember all of this was populated from what you filled in on the info page. And as you begin to fill in your budget form, remember you're only going to detail tabs and summaries will be filled in. So for example, if I have official or administrator or manager, let's say I have one full-time employee managing marketing for the expansion, okay? So in the justification and in the expenditure, you're going to describe that and really give the full details for that person. So it's one person at, say, let's say $45,000 annually, or maybe you would want to say $1,200 monthly. Okay. When I put it in here and I go to summary year 1, you see it's already populated. So as long as you don't mess up any formulas, everything should continue to work. And we all know how that works on Excel if you accidentally delete the formulas. But it's going to pull in from these details pages and will also populate in our summary page. So by the time you're done detail year 1, detail year 2, detail year 3, you'll see a fully completed 3-year summary. Obviously, the grant can be for up to $2 million. So as you're going through and adding things, this will be a good way to help check your math, and you can just keep checking the 3-year summary and seeing that your total is what you think it should be, and each of the object codes are where you thought they were. Okay. All right, so hopefully that helps you kind of feel more comfortable with this budget form. Remember, just download your own copy. If you need to use it live among several team members, just use it as a Google Sheet. If I save it, if I download it as an Excel, then it will just be a live document, a document on my computer in Excel that can be shared among staff members as well. Have anybody? Oh, I'm sorry. I think I had people waiting to get in. All right, do we have any questions about the budget form and what's necessary there? Oh, good question, Dee Dee. Can salaries be for current employees or is it only new employees? It can be a current employee, whatever time they are putting in dedicated to that activity, to that CSP grant activity, can be funded via the grant. Good question. So let's say back here on detail year one, and I put marketing for expansion. If I also had a full-time employee whose 20% of their time was dedicated to grant activities. And you would just describe that. And that's, and then you could just do the math here and show what that 20% amount would be. Great question. I'm glad you asked that. Thank you. Because obviously if you're expanding, you're not going to hire a whole new team. You're going to utilize those folks you already have and, you know, put some extra on their plate. We don't ever do that in the education world. Good question. Laura asks, how much flexibility is there to change budget items during the grant period, either switching from one allowable expenditure to another or changing out the vendor proposed in the initial budget? Plenty of flexibility. It's going to work just like any other time you're using EGMS. You're just going to submit an amendment in EGMS. Because remember, these are drawdown dollars, a reimbursement for an expenditure you've already had. So yeah, not a problem. Good. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to come back to my slides. Hopefully I can find those. There we are. Okay, so this form that we just looked at is linked here. I also dropped the link to the LDOE website in there, but I will be sending this slide deck out to everyone after the meeting today so that you will have a direct link to that Excel document. We talked about these eligible expenditures, the pre-opening salaries, refinement of the desired educational results and the method for measuring progress toward achieving those results, and then professional development of teachers and other staff who will work at the charter school. Notice that professional development is allowed in both phases, either planning or implementation. Refining of the desired educational results. Let's say you have applied for a new charter and you're starting I'll use a school that just opened this year as an example. Small school, very small population. They thought that they would really only have funding for projectors and pull down screens. Okay, the CSP funding allowed them to change that out to Promethean boards or touch screen boards in their classrooms instead of just simple projector pull down screen. That's a refinement of the desired educational result. Okay, so how did the CSP grant allow them to improve upon their idea that they already had and make it better? That's really what the CSP grant is hoping to do, is allow schools that have to, when you're starting a school, if we all lived in La La Land and we were like, we had endless dollars, we would have the best of all these things. And then as we, excuse me, y'all, I'm fighting a cold. As we begin budgeting these things out and we figure out, oh, well, we got to cut this and we have to cut that. And we have this CSP is, where do you not have to cut now? Okay. So really, I want you to think about how it can improve on your overall idea that you brought into your charter application or your replication plan. And also too, in implementation. implementation, acquiring the necessary and equipment and educational materials. Another example from last year, a school that was already authorized said, you know what, if we got this, we could include a whole new STEAM program and add all of the equipment that really takes. So I want you to think about, you already have an idea about building your school, your model, you're starting your new school, expanding your already existing school. You already have an idea about how you're going to make that work. How can CSP make it better? Okay. Can refinement include refinement of policies and procedures with expert assistance? Absolutely. I think that's a really good example. Like, you were going to wing it and you were going to try to find who's going to be our best source of information, maybe Google, or some nonprofit. And instead, you can hire actual professionals that are going to help you see exactly how it should all be laid out. Yes, that is absolutely a refinement of the policies and procedures, a refinement of the desired educational results. Measuring progress toward achieving those results. Let's say you planned on using a particular benchmarking suite. You really wanted to use this one, but the cost was just not effective for you. And now the CSP grant allows you to use this particular benchmarking suite. Keep in mind, however, what are you going to use to sustain it after the grant ends? Okay. So yes, it's meant to improve, but make sure it's not something that you'll need to sustain. Okay. And I can tell you, we're growing a school out. We're all going to think, well, as my enrollment increases, I'll have more dollars to work with. Okay. Yes. Okay. Do you know 3 years in advance where you're going to need those dollars to go? Because if you committed them in your CSP application, you don't want to have those dollars committed 3 years in advance, because really, are you going to know where that money is really going to need to be targeted in 3 years? Let's say you see in your data that it really needs to be going someplace better. Okay. All right. Any questions on any of this? Great. Okay, so other additional resources, these are US DOE resources, the non-regulatory guidance. This is really a good Q&A document. And then the actual grant, the expanding opportunities through quality charter schools grant, the whole explanation of the purpose behind the CSP funding and all of that. These are two other resources that you might find beneficial. The non-regulatory guidance, I turn to quite a bit when I'm answering your questions. So I would certainly suggest taking a look at that if you do stumble onto any questions. Okay. So from this point forward, we've had 2 technical assistance webinars, and I feel like I have covered the big picture, but I know that there's going to be several of you who have specific questions, specific to your school, specific to your mission and your model. And so I wanted to make sure you knew I was available to you. And so I know sometimes just meeting in person, being able to share documents back and forth is a good way to handle that. So I created an office hours, a booking link. I'm going to drop that in here in the chat so you can save that somewhere. And this is going to bring up a Google Calendar that will let you pick a 30-minute slot at any one of these times that I have available. If you need me beyond this, please reach out, call me, send me a message, an email. But if meeting in a video meeting, a video conference is more beneficial to you, these are the times that I've blocked out on my calendar to make sure that I'm available to you to help you in any way I can. And that is all, y'all. We are 30 minutes and done. How's that? Didn't get the link. Okay, you know what? I think I just, yep, because okay, here we go. Thank you so much. Make sure I send this to everyone in the meeting. Dee Dee, you were only one who got that. There we go. And I'm going to send this slide deck out to everyone. So it will include all of the links that we have in here, including the links to these other resources from USDOE, along with that budget form Excel link here. Thanks so much, everyone, for being here today and giving me so much of your time. I look forward to helping everyone get through their application process and hopefully get you some dollars into your schools. Thank you so much. Have a good one.